He mocked her ambition, but years later she buys the company he lost. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. The bustling sounds of the city faded behind Grace Harper as she walked into the swanky downtown office of her fiancé, Eric Stanton. She carried a homemade lunch in a paper bag, a gesture she thought would brighten his hectic workday. Eric was the picture of corporate success. Slick suits, a corner office, and a silver tongue that charmed everyone from clients to his own parents. Grace knocked softly on his door and pushed it open, but the sight that greeted her wasn't what she expected. Eric was mid-laugh, surrounded by his colleagues, holding court like a king among his loyal subjects. "I'm telling you, my Grace has these ridiculous ideas," Eric said, the smirk on his face cutting through the air like a blade. "She wants to start her own cosmetics line, as if that's going to change the world. Homemade lip balm. Cute, right?" Laughter erupted around him. Grace froze, the lunch bag trembling in her hand. He didn't notice her, or perhaps he didn't care. "What she doesn't get is that ambition isn't playing with glitter in the kitchen," Eric continued, basking in his audience's approval. "It's working deals and closing contracts. You know, real work." The laughter turned into a round of applause, but to Grace, it sounded like thunder. Her cheeks burned with humiliation. Without saying a word, she left the lunch on his desk, spun on her heel, and walked out of the office. That night, Grace confronted Eric in their shared apartment. "How could you humiliate me like that?" she demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. Eric barely looked up from his phone. "It was a joke, Grace. Don't be so sensitive." "A joke? You mocked my dream in front of your colleagues." He sighed, placing his phone on the table with exaggerated patience. "Grace, I'm just being realistic. You don't have the connections or the capital to make it in that world. I'm trying to save you from wasting your time." Her chest tightened, but she refused to let him see her tears. "I don't need you to save me, Eric. I need you to support me." "Support you?" he scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "You should be supporting me. My career is the one paying the bills, not your little hobby projects." Grace stared at him, a sinking realization dawning in her mind. Eric didn't see her as an equal. She was just an accessory to his polished life. That night, she packed her things and left, vowing never to let anyone diminish her ambitions again. The weeks that followed were tough. Grace moved into a tiny apartment above a florist's shop, its peeling wallpaper and creaky floors a stark contrast to the sleek condo she had shared with Eric. But in that modest space, she found something she hadn't felt in years: freedom. Every spare moment was devoted to her dream. Grace spent nights researching natural ingredients, experimenting with formulas, and learning about the cosmetics industry. She poured her savings into supplies and used her kitchen as a makeshift lab. Slowly but surely, she created her first line of products, eco-friendly, cruelty-free, and made with love. Her first batch of lip balms and moisturizers debuted at a local farmer's market. She stood behind a simple wooden table adorned with jars and tins, feeling equal parts excitement and terror. The first customer hesitated but smiled after trying a sample. "This is amazing," the woman said, handing over a few dollars. That single purchase was a spark. Word spread, and by the end of the day, Grace had sold out. As her small business grew, Grace faced her share of challenges. Suppliers delayed shipments, and late nights left her drained, but she pressed on. With every obstacle, her resolve only strengthened. 2 years later, her brand, Harper Naturals, had expanded from farmers' markets to boutique stores across the city. Social media buzzed with glowing reviews from influencers praising her products. Grace couldn't help but feel a surge of pride when she saw her once humble creations displayed in trendy shops. Meanwhile, Eric's career was faltering. His aggressive tactics alienated clients, and a scandal within his company led to a sharp decline in profits. Grace heard through mutual acquaintances that he was under immense pressure to turn things around. Maybe now he'll understand what it's like to struggle, she thought, but she quickly pushed the idea aside. Eric was her past, and she was determined to keep moving forward. One day, Grace received an unexpected email from a major investor. They were interested in partnering with Harper Naturals to scale her business nationwide. The meeting was scheduled for the following week at their downtown office. Grace dressed in her sharpest blazer and arrived with her portfolio in hand, her heart pounding with anticipation. When she stepped into the conference room, her breath caught. Sitting at the table, looking just as surprised to see her, was Eric Stanton. The air in the conference room grew thick with tension as Grace and Eric locked eyes. He looked much the same, though the confident spark in his gaze seemed dimmer. His tailored suit fit just right, but there was a weariness in the way he sat, a man grasping at remnants of his former glory. "Grace," he said, forcing a smile. "It's been a while." "It has," she replied coolly, taking her seat across from him. The investor leading the meeting cleared his throat, oblivious to the charged history between the two. "Thank you both for coming. We're very excited about this potential partnership." Eric, masking his discomfort, jumped into his usual smooth-talking routine. He presented his pitch with practiced charm, laying out strategies and projections. Grace noted the familiar arrogance in his tone, though his argument seemed less convincing than she remembered. When it was her turn to speak, Grace leaned forward, her voice steady and confident. She shared the story of Harper Naturals, emphasizing its steady growth, its loyal customer base, and its commitment to sustainability. She spoke of her vision to expand without compromising the brand's values. As she spoke, Eric's expression shifted. The disdain he once had for her dreams was replaced by something else. Unease, maybe even regret. When the meeting concluded, the investors thanked them both and promised to follow up. Grace gathered her things ready to leave, but Eric called out to her. "Grace, wait." She paused, turning to face him. "You've come a long way," he said, his voice tinged with hesitation. "I mean, Harper Naturals, it's impressive." Grace raised an eyebrow. "Thanks. I've worked hard for it." Eric chuckled nervously. "You know, it's funny. I was just thinking how much we could have accomplished if we'd worked together back then." Her gaze hardened. "Funny how you only see that now." He opened his mouth to respond, but she cut him off. "I believed in my dreams, Eric, even when you didn't. And I succeeded without you. So, forgive me if I'm not interested in what could have been." She walked away, leaving him standing alone in the corridor. Months passed, and Grace threw herself into expanding Harper Naturals. The partnership she had pitched was finalized, bringing her brand to national prominence. Billboards featuring her products began popping up in major cities, and she was invited to speak at industry events. Meanwhile, Eric's life continued its downward spiral. His company, once a titan in luxury goods, was teetering on the brink of collapse. A combination of poor management, market shifts, and scandal had left it withering in the shadows of its competitors. Desperation set in as he scrambled to save what was left. One evening, Grace received an email that stopped her in her tracks. The subject line read, "Acquisition Opportunity, Stanton Lux." Her heart raced as she read the proposal. Eric's company was seeking buyers, and her name had come up as a potential candidate. The irony was almost too much to process. She sat back, her mind spinning. Years ago, Eric had mocked her ambition, dismissing her dreams as childish fantasies. Now, he was unknowingly inviting her to take control of the empire he had once lorded over. The day of the acquisition meeting arrived. Grace entered the boardroom with a quiet confidence, her sharp navy suit a testament to how far she had come. The room was filled with Stanton Lux executives, all eager to finalize a deal that would save their sinking ship. Eric was already seated, his face pale when he saw her. "You," he whispered, the word barely audible. "Me," Grace replied, taking her seat at the head of the table. The meeting began, and Grace laid out her terms with precision and authority. Her team had prepared extensively, and she left no room for negotiation. Stanton Lux would be absorbed into Harper Naturals, with its assets restructured to align with her vision. As the presentation continued, Eric's shock turned to anger. "This is a hostile takeover," he blurted out. "You can't just—" Grace cut him off, her voice icy but composed. "This is business, Eric. Isn't that what you used to tell me? Real work. Consider this a lesson in ambition." The room fell silent. No one dared challenge her. The deal was finalized within weeks, and the media erupted with headlines about Harper Natural's bold acquisition. Grace became the face of a new era in the industry, celebrated for her innovative approach and relentless determination. Eric, meanwhile, was left with nothing. His once prized company was now under the control of the woman he had underestimated. He watched from the sidelines as Grace turned Stanton Lux into a thriving branch of her empire. One day, as she reviewed the final transition plans, Grace received a message from Eric. It was a simple request, a meeting to discuss his future. Against her better judgment, she agreed. They met at a small cafe, far from the corporate offices that once defined his life. "I'm not here to beg," Eric began, his voice heavy with resignation. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." Grace studied him, her expression unreadable. "I didn't believe in you," he continued. "I didn't see what you were capable of. And I paid the price for it." She sipped her coffee, letting his words hang in the air. "I didn't need your belief, Eric," she said finally. "I believed in myself. That was enough." She stood, leaving him at the table with his regrets. As she walked away, the weight of the past lifted from her shoulders. The success of Harper Naturals and its absorption of Stanton Lux sent ripples through the industry. Grace Harper became a household name, lauded for her sharp business acumen and innovative strategies. What had started as a small, passion-driven project had blossomed into a global powerhouse. Yet for Grace, the personal victory of reclaiming her narrative far outweighed the financial triumphs. Eric Stanton, however, was left in the shadows. Public opinion was unforgiving, with headlines recounting how the once mighty executive had been outmaneuvered by the very woman he had belittled. His humiliation was compounded by whispers within the industry that his fall was karmic justice for the way he had treated Grace years ago. He became a cautionary tale, a relic of corporate arrogance. Grace, on the other hand, thrived in her newfound role as a leader and innovator. But her journey wasn't without its challenges. Acquiring Stanton Lux meant inheriting its debts, restructuring its workforce, and untangling its tarnished reputation. It was a monumental task, but Grace tackled it with the same determination that had fueled her from the start. One of the company's flagship products, a luxury skincare line, was underperforming, and the team she inherited lacked the creativity to breathe new life into it. Grace decided to take matters into her own hands. She called a meeting with the department heads, a mix of old Stanton Lux employees and her trusted Harper Naturals team. "Let's face it," Grace began, holding up one of the poorly reviewed products. "This isn't working. Customers aren't buying overpriced products without substance. What they want is authenticity. A story." Her words sparked murmurs among the team. Grace noticed some of the Stanton Lux veterans exchanging skeptical glances. One man raised his hand. "With all due respect, this brand was built on exclusivity. Trying to pivot might alienate our loyal customers." Grace met his gaze, unwavering. "Your loyal customers are dwindling because they found brands that meet their needs without overpromising and underdelivering. We're not just selling products, we're selling trust. If you can't understand that, this might not be the right fit for you." The room fell silent. Grace wasn't there to placate egos. She was there to lead. The revamped product line, now under the banner of Harper Naturals Lux, launched 6 months later. Featuring innovative formulas and sustainable packaging, it was a hit, outperforming projections and earning praise for its transparency and effectiveness. Customers embraced the change, and Stanton Lux's tarnished legacy began to fade into the background. As her business flourished, Grace received invitations to speak at prestigious events and awards ceremonies. One such event, an industry gala honoring influential leaders, put Grace back in the spotlight. The grand ballroom was filled with luminaries, journalists, and industry insiders. Grace, dressed in an elegant emerald gown, took the stage to accept the Innovator of the Year award. As she approached the podium, the applause was deafening. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady yet emotional. "This journey has been one of resilience, vision, and most importantly belief in myself, my team, and the values that drive us forward." She paused, scanning the room. "There was a time when people told me my dreams were foolish, that I should settle for less. But I learned that the opinions of others don't define your potential. What matters is the faith you have in yourself." The audience erupted into applause, some rising to their feet. In the crowd, Grace noticed Eric seated at one of the back tables, his face a mixture of admiration and regret. As the event ended, Eric approached her, looking out of place among the mingling guests. "Grace," he began, his tone hesitant, "I didn't want to interrupt, but your speech was incredible." "Thank you," she replied, keeping her tone neutral. I wanted to say how proud I am of what you've accomplished," he continued. "And I know it doesn't mean much now, but I'm sorry for how I treated you. You deserved better." Grace studied him for a moment. The once proud man now stood before her humbled, stripped of the bravado that had defined him. "Eric," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I've made peace with the past. I don't need your validation, and I don't hold on to anger anymore. But understand this. I succeeded because I believed in myself, not because of anything you did or didn't do." He nodded, his shoulders sagging as if a weight had settled on him. "I hope someday I can find the same kind of strength." "Strength isn't given, Eric. It's earned," she said before turning and walking away, leaving him to reflect on his words. In the months that followed, Harper Naturals Luxe became the gold standard for innovation and sustainability in the industry. Grace's leadership inspired countless entrepreneurs, particularly women, who saw her story as proof that resilience and hard work could overcome even the most daunting odds. One evening, Grace stood in her expansive office, gazing out at the city skyline. The journey had been far from easy, but every setback, every challenge, had shaped her into the woman she had become. Her phone buzzed with a notification, another feature article about Harper Naturals' impact on the industry. She smiled, not out of vanity but out of gratitude for the path she had carved. Grace Harper wasn't just a success story. She was a testament to what could happen when ambition met unwavering determination. And the world would never forget it. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story.